Welcome back to the She Inspires podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jade, board certified family medicine physician, wellness and weight loss specialist, owner of the membership medical practice in Las Vegas, Inspire Primary Care, and I am so excited you are back. This is the space where busy women balance business and wellness. Are you a woman who has a product or a service that you feel like the She Inspires family would benefit from hearing about? Then reach out to our team. We would love to chat with you about sponsoring an episode of the She Inspires podcast and getting your product and service out there to the She Inspires fam. Today we are talking about balancing motherhood as a CEO. Recently we've been talking about balancing as an entrepreneur and balancing the hats, and I wanted to have our own episode specifically on motherhood as a CEO. Whether you don't want kids, there's going to be other things that are kid-like that you're going to have to balance, or if you already have children that have already grown up and left the house, no matter where you are in your motherhood journey, or if you're preparing for motherhood, or if you're in the thick of things like me with little ones, this episode will be helpful because children just require a certain level of energy from us, right? And I often get asked, how do you balance motherhood as a CEO and as a businesswoman? And I wanted, it deserved its own episode, okay? So at the time of this recording, my oldest daughter, Ava, is 5 years old. We just started kindergarten, y'all. It's crazy. It's so exciting. And our youngest daughter, Aaliyah, is 2.5. She likes to remind me that she's 2.5, not just 2, okay? And so it's a very exciting time for our family. Such a fun but exhausting time for children, right? And it's been interesting to see how things have developed as they grow, as our business grows. I've shared before that we opened Inspire Primary Care when Aaliyah was 8 weeks old. So, Aaliyah and Inspire Primary Care are the exact same age, 8 weeks apart. So it's so beautiful to see how Aaliyah is growing in her toddler phase and how Inspire Primary Care is growing in its toddler phase, and how the roles and demands for me as the CEO, as the founder of this company, how they morph and change and grow as the business stages change. So I wanted to share how, some things that have been helpful for me with motherhood as a CEO in this season. So number one is going to be work boundaries. Work boundaries. And the word boundaries, I feel like when we hear boundaries, it can feel like restrictive or have this negative connotation. And it really, I like to put a positive mindset and a positive spin around the word boundaries, because in every relationship where there are boundaries, we know how to treat each other, how to interact with each other. It fosters and nurtures a foundation for a healthy relationship and for longevity in our relationships, right? So often we'll see a business open and then the next day we come and the business is closed and it's closed down and we're like, what happened? I believe that business boundaries are a big component of that, all right? Outside of the financial and the business piece, right? But okay, so for me, some of my business boundaries, I've shared some of these before, but in the lens of how I balance motherhood and business. Some of the boundaries for me is that I don't work evenings and weekends, okay? So that is a boundary for me. I have business hours. I have hours during the weekday that I work, and in the evening when the practice closes, and on the weekends, I am work free. That's the time for my personal time. That's the time for my self-care time. That's the time for my children and my family. And that's really, truly a time to pour into my children, to use those evenings to be doing homework with them and to be doing screen-free time with them, to really use those weekends to do activities with them. I haven't really shared this yet because it is new, but our family has decided to homeschool Ava. And so as a family, we're homeschooling, and I have the privilege and the honor some of the days of the week to be really heavily involved in the homeschooling component. And that in itself is a blessing to be able to build the business around my family. And so having these boundaries, giving that undivided attention when I'm off, having that focus when I'm at work, and don't get me wrong, like my Inspire Primary Care members will tell you, like, I try to care for them as if they're my only patient. If they reach out, I reach back out. They text me, I text right back. They email, I email right back. Because when I am at work, it's 100% go. This is my time for my members. But then that switch flips to the opposite. When I'm off, I am off, and then my family gets my undivided attention. So those type of work boundaries have been really, really helpful for me. Now, number two, when it comes to balancing motherhood and being a CEO, has been intentional time. I have to be so intentional with my time. And people will say, okay, well, what does that mean exactly? We live in a world where we are just so enamored with our screens. I am one of those people too, right? It's a screen world where you'll see people at lunches and nobody's talking to each other. Everyone's on screen. You'll see kids in the car and they're on their iPads, right? So I have to be so intentional about screen-free time. Now I have to remind myself that screen-free time doesn't just mean screen-free for the kids, it means for mommy too. But having, like, for example, one of mommy's rules is in the car, we either are listening to worship music or we are talking to each other, but we are screen-free in the car. And so that's a time where we really connect and are intentional. And just other screen-free moments, and let me trust me, Ava will remind me, like, mommy, why are you on your phone? This is family time. And I love that she helps to keep me accountable. So that's one part of being intentional, really having specific areas where it's intentional screen-free time. Now, mommy-daughter dates are another part of our intentional time. And these don't have to be expensive things. Like, sometimes, yes, we do things where I'm like, oh, girl, you are my broke best friend. But then there are other things I do that are completely free, where last week we just went to one of the local splash pads and the kids had a ball. And I just had so much fun just seeing them run around in the water and play at the park, right? And so, but the thing that they care about is the memories. Like, they aren't going to remember all these materialistic things, but they will remember, was mommy there? Did mommy pay attention to me? Was mommy on her phone? Did she miss my things? And so that intentional time is so important, and those mommy-daughter dates help. Playing outside helps. Like, the other day we just went to the backyard and I was like, here, this is called a soccer ball. We're gonna kick it around our backyard. And we just had so much fun just kicking that ball around the backyard. And you would think that it was Disneyland in that moment. Okay, I may be exaggerating. My daughter's gonna listen to this and be like, no, mommy, it was not like Disneyland, okay? But that's an example, right? And being there for their things, like intentional time. For example, one of the things we do weekly is mommy and me gymnastics. I think they call it parent and me gymnastics, but I just call it mommy and me gymnastics. But me and my kiddos, my little one, the parent still has to be involved in the gymnastics, but just being there in the morning for drop-offs, doing the hair in the morning for pickups, not missing their things. Entrepreneurship has given me the blessing of that type of flexibility, but you still have to be super intentional, because what is a false thing when it comes to entrepreneurship is, oh, you become an entrepreneur and you have all this time. No, you become an entrepreneur and you go from a 9 to 5 to a 24/7, right? And so you have to be intentional. And I've learned I've had to be intentional about really having those boundaries and being intentional with that time, or entrepreneurship could just fold into all the hours of the day and night, okay? And so then number 3, when it comes to balancing motherhood as a CEO, that has been really helpful for me, is building my schedule and my business around my life, not building my life around my business. And so what I mean by this is, when I look at, okay, what does my family need in this season? Okay, my daughters have ballet on this day, they have gymnastics on this day, we serve at our church on this day, we participate in ministry and giving in the community on this day. All right, perfect. So let me build my work schedule around all of these things. And that really helps me to serve my members at the highest capacity, and also helps me to serve in the areas God has called me to, the other areas God has called me to, in the highest capacity. I think one thing that some entrepreneurs, especially physician entrepreneurs, may start off doing is saying, oh, well, before I was an entrepreneur, the clinic hours were Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Well, that doesn't necessarily have to be how it is. And luckily for my membership style of practice, our members have direct access to me. They're able to directly text me, email me, hop on phone or video, or come in office. So flexible that you just don't have those type of boundaries that you see in an insurance-based office, where they can have those high touch points. However, I'm still able to be very, very intentional about being with my family. So building your schedule and business around your life, not the opposite. That's the other thing. Now, a bonus is going to be, don't forget about your self-care and giving yourself grace. That's a huge part of balancing motherhood as a CEO. Give yourself grace. Be able to just be flexible with what's working, what's not working, what do we need to implement, what do we need to take away. My husband will tell me sometimes, like, yeah, the girls have noticed you're on your phone more. Ooh, okay, let me reevaluate that. And then other times the opposite, like, man, you've really been killing it around here. And it's like, okay, awesome. Let me keep things in place. This is a good flow for us in this season. So really giving yourself grace. Don't forget to fill your cup and serve others from the overflow. When it comes to motherhood, you are pouring out. When it comes to entrepreneurship, you are pouring out. So make sure to pour in, fill your cup, serve others from the overflow. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the She Inspires podcast. Definitely join us on social media. If you're not a part of our social media fam, join us on Instagram at Dr. Jade MD. Join us on YouTube at Dr. Jade MD. Subscribe to the channel and definitely share this with other busy professional women in your life who are balancing business and wellness. And if you got any value out of this, please leave the podcast a review. If you are a lady who has a product or service that you think will benefit the She Inspires fam, reach out to us to become a sponsored episode, and I'll see you on the next episode of the She Inspires podcast.